And welcome to Live Irish Myths. You're all very welcome to the Mythical Ireland Library. I'm Anthony Murphy, your host. For the next hour or so, we will be deep diving into Ireland's mythological and cultural past, as we have been doing since March of 2020. I'm hearing a buzz. My speakers are buzzing. Anyway, never mind. These are the technical hitches that happen on live TV. Apologies for missing last week's episode. We had a family matter, which was that one of our adult children had surgery, and so we were otherwise occupied last week. So forgive the interruption, as I'm sure you will. Winter has well and truly arrived in the Boyne Valley. It's wet, it's cold, it's dark, it's miserable. Step into the Mythical Ireland Library for some heat and light and comfort, as you always do. As usual, if you're watching, whether it's on YouTube or on Facebook, please do feel free to join in the conversation. If you comment, your comment is highly likely to be shown on the screen, as I always do. A special welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time, if indeed there are any of you. A special shout out this evening to our good friend, Angawa Tom King, who will not be watching this evening's episode, as Tom had to undergo a procedure today at the local hospital here in Drogheda, and hopefully all is well, and he is already on the road to recovery. I'm going to start the episode as I always do. Pardon me for my itchy nose. I'm going to start the episode as I always do by saying hello to anybody who has commented already. First in the comment section tonight are the two regulars from Dallas, Texas. First of all, Johnny Wilson. A very good evening to you, Johnny. And lovely to see you. And of course, all the other familiar faces and the not so familiar on our Zoom celebration of the 300th episode of Live Irish Myths, which was held almost 2 weeks ago. And I hope you enjoyed it, as I surely did. Elaine Dent-Lingenfelter, also from Texas, is saying it's a gorgeous day there, 22 Celsius. I'm sorry I missed the Zoom broadcast, but I've been watching it on YouTube. Loved putting faces to names. Yes, indeed. Brilliant stuff. Tuesday Thompson is wishing us all a happy Mythology Monday. Thank you very much. Wayne Bird says, evening, Anthony. Hope everyone is well and safe. Just at the train station now, waiting for my nipper. We'll be driving soon, but listening. Say hello to Tom, please. Absolutely will do. Wayne, safe driving. And Elaine is saying that it was good to put a face to Johnny Wilson's name as she watched the 300th celebrations, which is now on YouTube, by the way. Just in case you did miss that and you'd like to watch it back, our 300th Samhain celebration is available to view back. I will paste the link into the comments so that you can watch it back if you haven't already done so. Anne Scott Doherty, who was looking very comfortable during that Zoom meeting in her Queen's chair, is greeting us all from Ennistimon in the county of Clare. And a very good evening to you. I hope that the rain has passed. I believe it is going to pass here shortly to give way to much colder weather this week. Proper winter is arriving in Ireland, considering Wednesday a week ago we had 18 Celsius, which was a high temperature for the time of year. Who else? Brendan Byrne is saying, if all the oak trees vanish from Glendalough, it's because I'm building the Ark. Evening all. Yeah. Plenty of rain today, Brendan. Rex Fortenberry is saying, greetings, fellow travellers. Great to be here. Nice to listen to Mythflix and watch it rain here in Louisiana. Well, it's nice to be hosting Mythflix. Not so nice to be watching all that rain. It's cold and very wet today. Rex, pleasure to see you also on the Zoom. And Elaine reminding us that Tom is missing today's episode. Helen Hirsch Chader is greeting us all from the cold and blustery Black Hills of South Dakota. Why doesn't that sound familiar? Or why does that sound familiar? Lynn Murphy says, lovely. Yous are all lovely. Joe Butler, Auntie Joe, is in Colorado where it's warm and gorgeous. Well, share a bit of that around. Give us a couple of degrees off that, and maybe a bit of the dry if it is dry. Janet Moran says, hello, Anthony and the Mighty Tour from a beautiful 54 in Boston. What is that in Celsius? 12. That's not bad. Yeah, we take that. I think it's 6 degrees here at the moment. Actually, I always check, don't I? I might as well check. Current temperature at Dublin Airport, 5 degrees Celsius. I totally forgot to go to Ennis to watch the brass band, says Anne Scott Doherty, and you missed a wonderful event. A joint performance between Ennis Brass Band and Drogheda Brass Band. We had a fabulous weekend in County Clare, in the Banner County. Hallie B04, is that Halle Berry? Halle Berry is watching us. Wow, we are graced with the company of a celebrity. Evening all, I hope all return to normal in your home, Anthony. Glad to see you. Yeah, all good on this side, thankfully. Lynn Murphy, I hope all is well with the family. Yes, indeed. Oh, okay, Halle B is actually Sue Prenter. Okay. AKA Hacky B94. I think you have a keyboard issue there, Halle B. I like it, though. Let's just pretend you're Halle Berry for the moment. Lynn Murphy sending get well greetings to Tom, which hopefully he'll get the chance to watch back when he's recovered a bit. Debbie Sheehy is saying, hello, Anthony and the tour from a wet and cold Dublin. Same, right? Yeah, exactly the same. Samantha Healy is saying hello to myself and Tom and all the tour. Hello to you, Samantha, and a very good evening from Drogheda. Breed Boland says, congratulations. Thank you, Breed. Here's to another 300. Let's see how we get on. Thinking of Tom, good wishes and blessings, sir, says Brendan. Hope everyone is recovering well. Yes, indeed. And yeah, thankfully everything went smoothly. And the recovery will take weeks, but it's a gradual thing. But she's in good form. Hello, Antone, says Anne McCallum, and all the mighty two. I hope all is well with everyone. Glad I can join you today and looking forward to it. Hope the surgery went well and recovery quick and complete. Also, hope all goes well with Tom's procedure. Weather all over the place these past few weeks. Need to have different attire in the same day/evening. I know all about it. Yeah, copy and paste, as they say. Rossio is saying, hi, I finally got to be in the live stream again. I'm sharing with you a little of the Mexican sun. Well, that's very gracious of you and how generous. Please knock a few degrees off your temperature and pass it around to those of us who are feeling the cold. Richard Burgess is saying, hope these hospitalized people are doing well. Sunny and warm here in the Catskills today. Well, glad to hear it, Richard. My daughter is home and recovering. Tom, I didn't hear from since before his procedure this morning. So hopefully he is doing well. I expect he'll be back on his feet in no time. I love the 20 to 30 minutes of greetings, says Rossio. I'm on the 183rd. Have you watched all 180? Well, 182. Wow. That's impressive if you have. But yes, some people afterwards on YouTube are inclined to comment, get on with the discussion. Why do we have to have this? It's like, well, you don't understand. This is a huge part. It was from the beginning, since the beginning was during a pandemic when people were feeling a bit isolated and a little bit anxious. Lynn Swan is saying it's 2 degrees in Blackpool and very wet. I mean, if it turned to snow, maybe we could, I don't know. I don't like 2 degrees and rain. I mean, if it's going to be 2 degrees, I prefer snow, to be honest. Drumpf says, good evening, and a very good evening to you, wherever you are, which I can't remember. Janet Moran says, heal quickly, Tom. Hope all went well for you. Brilliant stuff. And as I said, he'll watch this back and he'll see all the greetings, all the well-wishers saying hello. More than a keyboard issue, says Halle Berry, a.k.a. Sue Prenter. The eyes are going, well, I mean, you see, I have to wear the old speckly when I'm looking at anything within, 18 inches of my eyes. I'm at that stage in life where the soup packet or the microwavable dinner has to be held at arm's length if I have any chance of seeing the instructions. And of course, the microwave instructions on said packets are so small I can't read them anyway. I'm at the stage in life where even these don't often do the job. I have to hold out said item at a distance, take a picture of it, and zoom in on the picture in order to read the instructions. So there you go. I can empathize. Kieran Burns says, "Good evening, hello, Kieran. You're very welcome to the live stream. Gosh, I forgot. We bought our tickets for 2025. Can't wait for the tour schedule to get set. Your tickets for Ireland. Oh yes, brilliant." Brendan, driving to the cottage on Saturday night, I forgot that the fantastic mountain rescue team had a fundraising event. A moonlight walk over the mountains of Glendalough. 750 hardy souls between me and the cottage, walking up the green road. Shout out to Mountain Rescue. Aren't they brilliant? Absolutely amazing human beings. Putting life and limb on the line to rescue others. Alan Hoskins says, "It's been a few weeks, but I'm once again able to be here with the rest of the tour. Raining and chilly here in Ballina, Killaloe, and a glass of Tullamore Dew at hand. Hope all are well." That's just the thing to warm you up and keep the cold out. Alan, on the way up the M7 yesterday, we travelled from Ennis to Drogheda with the brass band, M18, M7, M50, M1. On the way up the M7, I saw the sign for Ballina and Killaloe. So we passed not far, but too far away from you, and I gave a wave as I passed. Rossio says, "Yes, I've been watching all. I recently finished watching and hearing your readings about Lou Nabua. Brilliant stuff. Wow. Incredible." Heidi Roberts is saying, "Hello from the coast of Washington. Sun now in between storms." That sounds very Irish, but then the Pacific Northwest is like that, apparently. Very Irish. And Hallie B, otherwise known as Super Enter, says, "This is with the glasses. Stronger prescription, is that what you call it? Should have gone Specsavers, as they say. No, it sounds like you need stronger glasses. At some point, they'll have to fix binoculars to my face." I actually stumbled upon Mythical Ireland. This is Dronf, because I had an album from a Brazilian folk metal band called Tua de Danann. Oh, I've heard of that. I was curious about the meaning of the name, and that ended up fascinating me. Brilliant stuff. You just never know how people have arrived at Mythical Ireland. Janet Moran is telling Sue, "You're in good company with your aging eyes." And Paul Campbell is saying, "Greetings from Galway City on the Atlantic west coast of Ireland. Hope it's not too cold and windy and wet out there this evening, Paul." I'm sure it is, but I mean, I'm saying I hope it's not, but anyway. So you may know that this is just a total rabbit hole, complete distraction, and a little bit of a tiny quick insight into one of my other major passions in life. So some things that I've been interested in pretty much all my life, apart from astronomy, music, of course, with the brass band, and the other big hobby is what we call amateur radio. You may know that as ham radio, and actually there's a dispute or a bit of a mystery over the origin of the phrase ham radio, as to where the word ham comes from. It is suggested that in the early days of wireless telegraphy, particularly the sending and receiving of telegraphs using Morse code, that the professional senders and receivers of said telegraphs were professionals, paid professionals, using Morse code across the wireless, and that the amateurs would sometimes cause what we call QRM, which is ham code for interference, and that they were the ones who said these hams are causing QRM or interference. Anyway, I want you to have the quickest look. Total, as I say, total distraction. Just realized I need a cloth for a second. Quick look at what we would call a handheld transceiver, and the handheld transceiver covering the VHF and UHF bands that amateurs use, 2 meters and 170 centimeters. So 2 meters is the wavelength, and the frequency would be 144 to 146 megahertz. Or if you're in the United States, I think it's 144 to 147 megahertz. And on UHF, ultra high frequency, we use the 430 megahertz to, I think it's 430 to 440. I'm not exactly sure of the band edges. But anyway, here is a handheld transceiver. So this is a big one. You can get smaller ones, such as this one. Little, as we say, handheld transceiver, very portable, sort of thing that you bring when you're going somewhere so that you can maintain contact with your ham buddies. But I got this particularly big one recently. Oh, it came to Ireland all the way from China. But I want to demonstrate something, right? And that is, so it's made by Baofeng. And you look at that, it's Baofeng. It's a Chinese manufacturer. Apparently it's pronounced Baofeng, not Baofeng. But just watch what happens when I switch it on. It's personalized. Wait, you see this? I think this is just the coolest thing ever. Hang on till I just zoom in. Try and get my face out of it. Just wait, you see what happens when I switch it on. Wait, you see how cool this is. It's me, right? And it's not just me. It's me and my call sign, but it's also the Mythical Ireland logo. Isn't that just the coolest thing ever? You can definitely want to zoom out, Anthony. They do not need to see your blemishes. Yeah, so it's the first handheld transceiver that I've ever owned, which you can personalize with a switch-on picture. So if it gets lost or stolen and somebody switches it on, they'll know who it belongs to straight away. So anyway, so I guess you could say communicating is something that I've always enjoyed doing. So no surprise then that I should end up live streaming to a worldwide audience, since for the past 15 years, since I got my ham license, I've been making what we call QSOs, which is ham terminology for a contact, with radio amateurs around the world, many of them in Europe and the United States and Asia and Australia and New Zealand and Africa, and then all the rarer parts of the world where there are very few or no radio amateurs, and where radio amateurs go sometimes to what we call activate a rare entity or an island, a country that doesn't have any radio amateurs in it. So, for instance, at the moment today, made some contacts with Sao Tome and Principe Island, which is off the west coast of Africa. And also there's what we call a D-expedition. So an expedition to a rare entity, and DX means long distance in ham radio, to the Falkland Islands. And where else? Currently, the South Cook Islands are active as well. So there you go. Little insight into some of the other stuff that goes on here, other than Mythical Ireland and Live Irish Myths and all that stuff. And anyway, let me just go back, because I've definitely missed a few QSOs. I want to be part of the Mythical Ireland 1000 episode, says Brendan. So do I. Maybe we should go back to doing daily episodes then, because we could be there in 2 years if we did that. Wow. Oh, by the way, I finally decided that I'll be visiting Ireland next year for my birthday on June with my mom instead of my boyfriend, and we'll be staying there for 3 weeks. Brilliant stuff. Wow. I wonder, is it close to the summer solstice? But that's a lovely time of the year to visit Ireland. Very long days, sunshine from, well, brightness from about 4 a.m. until about 11 o'clock at night. It doesn't actually get fully dark in midsummer, so pretty much for the month of June, it doesn't really get dark at night. Fantastic time of the year to be here. Ham. Are we talking about the same thing as bacon? Maybe it's bacon radio, sausage radio. We love rabbit holes, says Barbara. Yes, indeed. Of course, transceivers get bigger and more complex. I can't show you the main HF or shortwave transceiver, but anyway, there are videos of it on the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel. Mark Gordon is saying, good day, everyone. I think Mark is in Iowa, unless you've moved. Mark, a very good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, indeed, QRM radio. If you turn your radio to 20 meters during a contest weekend, yeah, I actually like contesting. So contesting is where radio amateurs spend a day or a weekend trying to make as many contacts as possible around the world, and it means the bands get packed with big signals, and that annoys the casual users who don't contest. So it's kind of a controversial aspect of the hobby. Do we now need ham radio call signs? Over, says Brendan. Well, to get one, you need to pass a test, and you need to prove that you have a good knowledge, not just of Ohm's law and the construction or the makeup of a receiver or a super heterodyne receiver, but also things like propagation and band plans, radio RFI interference and electromagnetic compatibility. So if you think you were up for that, by all means, but you can't just make one up, unfortunately. But yes, that is so cool. Yeah, I think so. A radio that has my, I think, to be honest, if it ever gets stolen and somebody switches it on and they see that face on it, they'll immediately go, oh, I'm definitely giving this back. There's been a good tradition of big band music in Galway City, probably due to St. Patrick's Brass Band, established in 1896. Wow, brilliant stuff. Steve Martinson says, very cool, as does Elaine Dent-Lingenfelter, yes. Oh, mini Sir Anthony. Oh, by the way, these things are cheap, by the way, the Chinese ones. I call that son or daughter, and there's mommy or daddy. You can, if you want, pay €500 or $500 for a handheld transceiver, but the ones that are made in the Far East are about a tenth of that, believe it or not. Fun, says Barbara. Yeah, well, I think so. Cromwell said, warts and all. Maureen Joyce saying that. I presume that's in relation to the unfortunate zoom in on my face. I won't do that again. Junction 27 on the M7 is indeed our turning, just 10 kilometres away. I thought I heard the sound of a euphonium passing in the distance. All is now explained. At that point, Alan, I was nodding in and out of sleep. Let's just say that many of the band members did not get to bed until the early hours of Sunday morning. There was much singing and regaling and conversation. Barbara Murphy is telling Chris Haney-Lang that they can't sneak in unannounced. The Red Book will be produced. Got my license back in 1994. Fascinating hobby. Remind me of your call sign, Dronf. I wonder, have we ever made a QSO? Or maybe we should make a SKED. A SKED, S-K-E-D, ham terminology for a scheduled contact. You can make contact with the space station, as I have done, although on APRS, not on voice. I heard one of the astronauts this evening, chatting with some school kids, answering their questions. Yes, and you can, if you have a receiver, you don't have to have a license to receive 145.800 on the 2 meter band is the frequency used for those contacts. Is there a fee when using a ham radio? No, the only fee is to pay for your license in the first place. And in fact, we went years ago in Ireland. I'm not sure what it's like in Canada and in other parts of the world, Anne, but you used to have to pay an annual fee for your license. But we went to a lifetime license, and I think it was €100. So there's no other cost other than the cost of the equipment, and also, of course, the electricity costs to run it. But no, and it's a hobby where what we call pecuniary gain, financial gain, is you're not allowed to use it professionally. It's a hobby. It's snowing in Lancashire, says Dawn. Wow. Make a snowman. But hang on to the end of the episode before you do that. Yet Mark is still in Iowa. Brilliant stuff. Teresa Collins says, GE of Anthony and the mythical Monday tour from Killarney. Brilliant stuff, Teresa. Hope it's not too cold and miserable down there. Barry Goldwater was a well-known ham radio operator years ago in Phoenix, Arizona. Wonder what his call sign was. It's a funny thing. We all know each other by our call signs. It's like an identity, you know. We need to guess your hand sign. I guess rabbit hole calling. Yeah, in CB, unlicensed shortwave transmissions on 27 megahertz, you use what's called a handle. Just make up a nickname, as it were. Does it count that I occasionally listen to Irish radio stations on the Radio Garden app? Well, we would call you a shortwave listener. My father used to listen in 60s and 70s, says Lynn. Wow. Ham radio was different back then. A lot more people on the air today, and a lot more modes used. Back in the day, it used to be just SSB, as we say, single sideband, or voice contacts, and CW or Morse code. But nowadays there are lots of digital modes as well. Anyway, I suppose I better get to it and stop waffling about amateur radio. We're starting a new chapter this evening in P.W. Joyce's A Social History of Ancient Ireland. And look how far we've come. We've that much read and that much left to go. So I make that about 4/5. I think it's more than 3/4. I think that's about 4/5 of the book. You know. Desiree Riley, hello. Running a little late. That's perfectly okay, Desiree. Hope all is well with you. And we've just been saying that it's cold and wintry here, and there's a talk of snow, but it looks like the Boyne Valley is going to miss the snow. It's going to be mostly in the west and northwest, but it's going to be a cold week here. The first proper cold week of the winter, to be honest. Lynn Swan, I was on CB in the early 80s. Yeah, I was on the CB in the probably the late 80s and the early 90s. Great days. Back then, of course, when not every house had a phone, and before mobile phones or cell phones existed, when it was costly to make phone calls, a lot of people went on to CB and chatted to each other for free, you know. Anyway, this is called Irish Language and Literature. So this should be an interesting chapter. The first section, which we're starting tonight, is called Divisions and Dialects of Celtic. So bear with us as we explore this aspect of the past, and enough to keep us going. This chapter in particular, enough to keep us going for probably 3 episodes at least, I would say. Yeah. Oh, you've been reading a lot. I need to listen to your earlier streams. Yeah, we've been reading this book on and off. Probably, well, certainly for the best part of this year, I think. And I used to put it in the title of the videos, A Social History of Ancient Ireland, Part 20, for instance, streamed 7 months ago. But we didn't need to do that anymore. Social History, Part 12, Part 7, Part 4, Part 1. We started streaming about a year ago, actually. Imagine we've been reading this for a year now. 6 dialects. There are 2 main branches of the ancient Celtic language. By the way, Cattins S is saying, Gia, you from Rathmore in Kerry. Hello, Cattins. And not the first viewer from Kerry this evening, but we're always delighted to welcome you. I lived in Portugal and no one had phones. Oh no, a whole chapter on books, says Barbara. Yep. So the 2 main branches of the ancient Celtic language were the Gaelic or Irish. Now, Gaelic in the first sense spelled Goidelic. And you would look at that and say Goidelic. But of course, with Linician Gaelic, which is where the word Gaelic, Gaelic, comes from, or Irish. And the British, corresponding with the 2 main divisions of Celtic people of the British Islands. Each of these has branched into 3 dialects. Those of Gaelic are the Irish proper, spoken in Ireland, the Gaelic of Scotland, differing only slightly from Irish, and the Manx, which may be said to be Irish written phonetically with some dialectical variations. The dialects of British are Welsh, spoken in Wales, Cornish, spoken till lately in Cornwall, and remember that this book was published in 1903, and Breton or Armoric, spoken in Brittany. The dialects of British differ among themselves much more than do those of Gaelic. They should indeed be reckoned rather distinct languages than dialects. Although Zeus, Zeuss, not to be confused with the Greek god, includes all three under the designation Britannic. Their wide divergence, as compared with the dialects of Gaelic, is explained by the fact that Welsh, Cornish, and Armoric flowed independently from the common source very far back in time, while both the Manx and the Scotch Gaelic branched off from Irish Gaelic at a comparatively late period. Of the whole 6 dialects, 5 are still spoken. The Cornish became extinct in the 18th century, and Manx is nearly extinct. I wonder, does anybody happen to know whether Manx has made a resurgence as a spoken language on the Isle of Man? Something I don't know about. Perhaps somebody else who's watching can maybe fill us in a little bit. Sorry, I just see a minor issue with the focus. 4 have an ancient written literature: Irish, Welsh, Cornish, and Armoric. Neither the Gaelic of Scotland nor the Manx has an ancient literature distinct from that of Ireland, but Scotland has a living modern literature. All these are derived from the Gaulish or continental Celtic, which in the course of ages, since the separation of the original Gaulish emigrant tribes, has diverged into the 2 branches and the 6 dialects named here. Oh, Ura. Yeah, fabulous. Magical setting for Ura Stone Circle. Sorry I could not make it. Unexpected visitor to accommodate. Was sorry to miss it myself. This is Ivani Ali, obviously talking about our Zoom meeting. Congratulations on the big 300th episode. Here's to 300 more. Best of luck. But as we all know, if you're lucky enough to be born Irish, you're lucky enough already. Marina from New Zealand. Yes, indeed. Can't argue with you there, Ivani. A very good morning to you. Happy Tuesday morning from all of us. Still in Monday. Rex is saying winter finally got here, down to 80 Fahrenheit today. Now, if you, I suppose that's quite bearable. That's 26.6. Wow, that's a warm summer day for us. Yeah, I can imagine. Is it still? Have you still got the high humidity, the sticky weather, as we'd call it, the sticky, close weather? 3 divisions of Irish. Irish, like all other living languages, has undergone great changes in lapse of time. So that, in fact, the written language of 11 or 1200 years ago, of which many specimens have been preserved, is now all but unintelligible to those who can read only modern Irish. The changes are in vocabulary, in spelling, and in inflections. Numberless words have dropped out of use, while others have been introduced chiefly from other languages. Many of the words have changed their spelling, and some of the old inflections have been dropped and their places supplied, either by other inflectional forms or more commonly by prepositions and auxiliaries, so as to render the language more analytic, as in the case of English. Yeah, still humid, says Rex. It is usual to divide Irish, as we find it written, into 3 stages. 1. Old Irish, from the 7th or 8th to the 11th or 12th century. This is the language of the glosses of the Irish found in the Book of Armagh and some passages in Laura Nahira or the Book of the Dun Cow. But we have very little Old Irish preserved in Ireland. The classical age of the language was while the Old Irish prevailed. According to Zeus, the written language gradually changed from the 11th century onwards. The oldest, purest, and most cultivated form, as found in the St. Gall and other 7th or 8th century glosses, was called Béarla Féine, i.e. the language of the Féini, or main body of the free original habitants. It's amazing that, because the modern Irish word for English is Béarla. After the Anglo-Norman invasion, the native language, like the native arts, degenerated, and it gradually lost its pure grammatical forms and its classical precision and simplicity. 2. Middle Irish, from the 12th to the 15th century, marked by many departures from the Old Irish forms. This is the language of most of our present important manuscripts, described further on. That will be in a later episode, such as the Book of the Dun Cow, the Book of Leinster, the Lower Breck, and the Book of Ballymote. And of course, thirdly, Modern Irish, from the 15th century to the present day. This is the language of most of the Ossianic tales, that is, those involving Oisin and Finn and the Fianna. The purest specimens are the writings of Keating, that's Geoffrey Keating, both historical and religious. There is a vast amount of manuscript literature in Modern Irish. Glosses. When transcribing or using the classics or the Latin version of the scriptures, Irish professors and teachers of the 7th, 8th, and 9th centuries, in order to aid the Irish learners, or for their own convenience, often wrote between the lines or on the margin literal Irish translations of the unusual or most difficult words of the text, or general rendings of the sense into Gaelic phrases. These are what are called glosses. Brief clarification before we proceed. I see lots of people online, especially on social media, non-Irish natives, but usually with some Irish heritage or descendancy, saying that they're going to learn Gaelic. We actually don't call our language Gaelic, and I know Joyce here refers to Gaelic several times. We call it Irish or Gaeilge, Gaeilge. We actually don't generally call it Gaelic. So when we are asked, as I sometimes am, by non-Irish people, basically, people who weren't born and reared with the language, do you speak Gaelic? The answer would be, well, I speak some Gaeilge or some Irish, just to clarify that. Anyway, these lines, these explanations written between the lines or in the margins are generally what's called glosses. Numbers of these interesting manuscripts, their pages all crowded with glosses, are preserved to this day in many continental libraries, mostly written in Ireland, and brought away to save them from destruction, but some written on the continent. And in them are found older forms of Irish than we have in Ireland. Many have been recently published, with the Latin words and passages and the corresponding Gaelic, Gaeilge. Similar glosses in Welsh, Breton, and Cornish are also found, but I am concerned here with Irish only. It is chiefly by means of these glosses that the ancient grammatical forms of the language have been recovered, and the meanings of numbers of Irish words, long obsolete, have been ascertained from their Latin equivalents. Something like a Rosetta Stone, if you will. Just to catch up again. The celebratory Zoom meeting was indeed nice. We got to meet some folk behind the names. Yeah, great for me not to be the only face visible, which was great. I hope our language doesn't die. Fair play to Wales. There's a great uptake there. I think there's a growing interest in Irish here too. I think it is kind of experiencing a resurgence, and may it continue to flourish. I've been following a young man on Facebook who regularly posts some old phrases in Gaelic and the meaning behind each one to encourage the young generation to learn it. His name is Stuart. Is it Mackey or McKee? Brilliant stuff, Rossio. We must look him up. I'm going to have to download that, says Desiree. I'm trying to learn Irish online, says Janet. Easy? It is not. I've picked up a few phrases, but won't be conversing formally anytime soon. I suppose the main thing for a non-native, because we were taught Irish in school from a young age until we left school, even though I wouldn't be fluent, it gives you a good sense of pronunciation. And I think pronunciation is one of the big barriers for English speakers who are coming to the Irish language for the first time. What you see is often not what you get. Consequently, the whole discussion that takes place regularly about people who pronounce the Tua de Danann, Tuatha de Danann, the people who pronounce Bealtaine, Beltane, and the people who pronounce Samhain, Samhain, to give you just a few examples. Stick with it, Janet. I mean, it'll be brilliant, even to speak, as I say, Kupla Focal, you know. Ola Conrad is in Denmark. And I think, Ola, I saw somewhere a comment, didn't I, that you had missed the Zoom for some reason or other, and we were sorry that you were unable to make it. We missed you indeed. Lovely Denmark, says Lynn. It is interesting to observe that here the original intention is reversed. The scribe wrote the Gaelic, which was the language of his everyday life, to explain the Latin text. But while the Latin, being then as now a dead language, has remained unchanged, the Gaelic has suffered all those changes spoken of a couple of pages ago, so that the Gaelic of the glosses is now in many cases difficult and obscure. Accordingly, instead of the Gaelic explaining the Latin, we now use the Latin to explain the Gaelic. Now, this section is called Zeus. The first to make extensive use of the glosses for these purposes was Johann Caspar Zeus, a Bavarian, born 1806, died 1856. He died at the age of either 49 or 50, young man. He had a great talent for languages and began the study of the Celtic dialects about 1840. Thenceforward, he laboured incessantly, visiting the libraries of St. Gall, Würzburg, Milan, Karlsruhe, I think, Cambrai, and several other cities, pardon my pronunciation, in all of which there are manuscript books with glosses in the Celtic dialects. And he copied everything that suited his purpose. He found the Irish glosses by far the most ancient, extensive, and important of all. Most of them belonged to the 7th or 8th century, some few to the beginning of the 9th. At the end of 13 years, he produced the great work of his life, Grammatica Celtica, a complete grammar of the 4 ancient Celtic dialects, Irish or Gaelic, and the 3 British dialects, Welsh, Cornish, and Armoric, published 1853, which was a whole 50 years or a half century before Joyce's book was published. It is a closely printed book of over 1,000 pages, and it is all written in Latin, except, of course, the Celtic examples and quotations. Each of the 4 dialects is treated of separately. In this work, he proves that the Celtic people of the British Islands are the same with the Celtae of the continent, and that Celtic is one of the branches of the Aryan or Indo-European languages, abreast with Latin, Greek, the Teutonic languages, Sanskrit, etc. After his death, a second edition with much valuable additional matter was brought out by another eminent German Celtic scholar, H. Ebel, E-B-E-L. Zeus was the founder of Celtic philology. The Grammatica Celtica was a revelation to scholars, wholly unexpected, and it gave an impetus to the study which has been rather increasing than diminishing since his time. He made it plain that a knowledge of the Celtic languages is necessary in order to unravel the early history of the peoples of Western Europe. Since the time of Zeus, many scholarly works have been written on Celtic philology, but the Grammatica Celtica still stands at the head of all. When I went to school in Galway to learn Irish, the Irish I can still say without any problem is the amazing Irish curses, which I still remember. Most are very cruel. John Inman says a census in the 50s had more than 30% speakers of Scottish. Wow, Scottish Gaelic. Yes, they tried to suppress, so we keep stum. Definitely, pronunciation is interesting, humorous, unintentionally. Helen is still working on her Gaelic every day, have gotten hooked on Cymraeg as well. They're quite different. Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I can have a good go at pronouncing most Irish proper nouns and words, even if they are Middle Irish. Welsh, I have much, much more difficulty with, which is why Mavanway always tries to help us out, and maybe a couple of others as well. Barbara is saying, I'm 3+ years on trying to learn Irish on Duolingo. I suck. I wouldn't think you're that bad. I think you're probably much better than you think you are. Rex picked up a book on Irish blessings and curses from Kenny's bookshop in Galway. First time there. It's great. Yes, indeed. The book, and I presume Kenny's, which is a fabulous bookshop. Ancient glossaries and grammars. In consequence of the gradual change of the Irish language, it became customary for native scholars of past times, skilled in the ancient language, to write glossaries of obsolete words to aid students in reading very ancient manuscripts. Many of these are preserved in our older books. The most noted is Cormac's Glossary, ascribed to Archbishop Cormac MacCuillenan, King of Cashel, who died in AD 908, and he has had the honour and privilege of being mentioned on many an episode of Live Irish Myths. It was translated and annotated by John O'Donovan, and this translation and the Irish text, with most valuable additional notes, have been published by Dr. Whitley Stokes, another gentleman who has been mentioned on many occasions. Michael O'Clery, the chief of the Four Masters, printed and published at Louvain. How do you pronounce that? It's French. Louvain. Louvain. In 1643, a glossary of ancient and difficult Irish words, which has been edited and republished by Mr. W. K. Miller in volumes 4 and 5 of the Revue Celtique, a journal which began to be published in the late 1800s, which also has had many mentions here on Live Irish Myths, and at least some of its volumes are available in modern facsimile reprints. Very valuable work by the early philologists and linguists. 3 Irish glossaries, I have it here on the shelf behind me, or at least a facsimile reprint, edited by Dr. Stokes, with learned and instructive introduction, contains those of Cormac and O'Davaran, the famous O'Davaran glossary, and a third, namely, a glossary to the Failure of Angus, all without translation, but Cormac's glossary, as stated above, has been translated in a separate volume. MacFurbish and his master O'Davaran compiled glossaries of the Brehon laws, which are still extant, and there are in Trinity College copies made by MacFurbish of several other glossaries. There is a very ancient treatise on Irish grammar, divided into 4 books, ascribed severally to 4 learned Irishmen. Of these, the latest was Ken Faila, the learned, who lived in the 7th century, and who is set down as the author of the 4th book. Copies of this tract are found in the books of Ballymote and Lecan, but it has never been translated. But with all the aids at our command, glossaries, glosses, translations and commentaries, there are many Irish poems in the books named below. That's further on. Again, that's 492. We're on 476, so that'll be an episode or 2 forward in time, that have up to the present defied the attempts of the best Irish scholars to translate them satisfactorily. So many old words, phrases, and allusions do they contain, whose meanings have been lost. This state of things has been caused chiefly by the wholesale destruction of manuscripts, and mentioned at page 489, infra, that's further on, which left great gaps and broke the continuity of the Irish language and literature. The poetry is much more intractable than the prose, for reasons that will be explained farther on. But the subject is attracting more and more attention as years go by, so that now it may be said that the language, literature, and antiquities of Ireland, and of the Celtic nations in general, excite almost as keen an interest throughout Europe as those of Egypt and Assyria. Great numbers of continental scholars, as well as those of the British Isles, are eagerly engaged in studying ancient Irish texts. Year by year, the difficulties are being overcome, and there is every hope that before long we shall have translations of most or all of these obscure old pieces. Now, the second section of this chapter about Irish language and literature is called Writing and Writing Materials. I find the Irish syntax to be quite challenging, and this English-speaking tongue has a time with many of the fun Irish sounds I can imagine, and that's exactly the challenge, Excellent resource, Revue Celtique, yes indeed. There's Nora Gaffney O'Connor. Trnonoa Nora, an bhfuil tú ag snámh cois farige inniu. Smells something like a candle burning. One moment, please. Probably always a good idea when you think you smell smoke or something burning to go and check it out. Apparently a candle, yes indeed. Judy McQueen is in the house. Hello, Judy. You're late. I had to say it. Welcome, of course. Scribes. After the time of St. Patrick, as everything seems to have been written down that was considered worth preserving, interestingly, that included swathes of Irish mythological material, manuscripts accumulated in the course of time, which were kept in monasteries and in the houses of hereditary professors of learning, many also in the libraries of private persons. As there were no printed books, readers had to depend for a supply entirely on manuscript copies. To copy a book was justly considered a very meritorious work, and in the highest degree so if it was part of the Holy Scriptures or of any other book on sacred or devotional subjects. Can you imagine in early medieval times being told, Anthony, we have this big manuscript that we've written. We want you to make a few photocopies. Today we can do all manner of things. We can scan using a flatbed scanner. We can take pictures with our phone. We can do OCR. We can take photos with a camera. There's a myriad way of copying things. Back then, you had to skin a load of calves to make your vellum. You had to get stylus, or is that what they were called? Stylus, quill, and ink. And then you literally had to spend the time transcribing. Yeah. So they were very valuable. And of course, those that are still extant are extremely valuable, I've lost my place. Scribes or copyists were therefore much honoured. I bet you they were. And the annalists, after mentioning a man otherwise learned and eminent, whether bishop, priest, or lay professor, considered it an enhancement to his dignity if they were able to add that he was a scribe. Do you ever see that funny cartoon where there are two monks in a scriptoria being the plural, and one monk is lying flat across the desk, and the other monk shouts, "Printers down!" Today, it's so convenient today. We just go Control P or Apple P if you're on or Command P. Isn't that what it's called on Apple? The Apple key, Command P. And, print, and, multiple copies stream out of the printer. Oh, we don't know how lucky we have it, In the decrees of some of the Irish synods, the same punishments are ordained for those who kill or injure a bishop, an abbot, or a scribe. One of the merits of St. Columkill was his diligence in writing. The Four Masters mentioned 61 eminent scribes before the year 900, 40 of whom lived between the years 700 and 800. One of the indications that show the importance attached to their office and how highly they were esteemed. There was at least one special scribe in every important monastery, who was selected partly for his scholarship and partly for his skill in penmanship. These men, outside their necessary religious duties and functions, apologies, devoted their whole time to copying and multiplying books. Now, as I said, no scanners or printers back then. But besides those specially appointed to this work, the other monks often employed themselves, like Columkill, in copying, when they could withdraw from their own duties. Scribes were very careful to test the correctness of their transcript, especially if it was scripture. Adovnon relates that Bython, one of the monks of Iona, when he had finished copying a psaltery, asked Columba to let one of the brethren look over it with him, aka early medieval proofreading, to discover errors, if any, and accordingly the whole copy was read through, but only one single letter was found to be wrong, indicating the vast skill and patience of the copyist. Now, this section is called vellum. Two chief materials were used in Ireland for writing on: long, thin, smooth, rectangular boards or tablets. I tell you, look, we didn't have printers, but we had tablets in early medieval Ireland. What would see who can come up with the most humorous answer? What would the early medieval Irish version of the iPad be called? Go on. Let's see some funny answers. And vellum or parchment, made from the skins of sheep, goats, or calves, which was the most usual and the most important material. Inscriptions were also carved on stone, both in ordinary Irish letters and in O. The scribes had to make all their own materials: tablets, vellum, ink, and pens, or rather perhaps certain individuals devoted themselves to this special work, who thereby became skillful and expert. Ink, Irish dove, i.e. black. The ink was made from carbon, without iron or any other mineral, as is shown by delicate chemical analysis. In the more ancient manuscripts, a thick kind of ink was used, remarkable for its intense blackness and durability. And its excellence is proved by the fact that in most of the very old books, the writing is almost or altogether as black as it was when written, more than 1,000 years ago. The writing in the Book of Armagh says Reeves, after 1,050 years, is as black as if executed but yesterday. And no answers to the question of what you call an early Irish medieval iPad. The ink was kept in a little vessel, commonly made of part of a cow's horn, and therefore called iarceen, meaning little horn, from iarc, a horn. Once, as we read in an Irish life of St. Columkill, an awkward fellow came into the saint's little hut and knocked over the iarceen and spilled the ink. The same incident is told in Adovnon's Latin life, in which the ink vessel is called corniculum, little horn, the exact equivalent of iarceen. Pen. The beauty, neatness, and perfect uniformity of the handwriting in old Irish manuscripts have led some English antiquaries to express an opinion that the scribes used metallic pens, but this opinion is quite untenable. Keller holds, and indeed shows, that their pens were made from the quills of geese, swans, crows, and other birds, and in this he is followed by Miss Stokes. The correctness of this contention is proved by some pictures in Irish manuscripts, as for instance in the representation of St. John in the Book of Kells, where the evangelist engaged in writing his gospel holds in his hand a pen, the feather of which can be clearly perceived. Friar pad. I like that. There you go. There's a good answer. The friar pad. Do you want correct answers or wrong answers, says Paul. This is not the no-name trivia show, but I mean, I'll take either if they're humorous. Yes, the inkstand is also represented as a simple, slender, conical cup, Ire Keen, fastened either to the arm of the chair or upon a small stick on the ground. There is a legend in the Irish life of St. Molaise of Devonish, which goes to confirm all this. It is in a late manuscript, 16th century, which was no doubt compiled from much earlier authorities. Here we read that on one occasion the saint was desirous of copying something out of a book, but at the moment had no pen. Just then a flock of birds flew over his head, and one of them dropped a quill, which Molaise made into a pen and wrote out his copy. The knife with which they cut the quill pens is shown in one of the 8th century glossed manuscripts, from which Zeus drew the materials for his Grammatica Celtica, where is seen a figure of St. Matthew the Evangelist writing in a book which lies in front of him and holding in his left hand a sort of penknife. Fascinating. The full Irish, Gary is in the house. Well done on 300. Anto, what have you put every episode on a flash drive? Would that be classed as a modern day manuscript? Yeah, I suppose. I mean, this is how we do things today, isn't it? You know, the old-fashioned pen and paper is kind of going out of fashion, and I don't like that. This is coming from a man who uses mechanical typewriters. Support for manuscripts. The old scribes sometimes wrote with the book resting on the knees, having a smooth board for support. Dowald MacFirbish, writing in the year 1650, says the history written by the ancient Irish scribes, says of the history written by the ancient Irish scribes, that it was, quote, written on their knees in books, unquote, which were preserved in his time in libraries. But when the writing was to be elaborate or ornamental, a desk was used, and if necessary, a maul stick to support the wrist, as shown in figure 124. Now, I can't show you that, because in this facsimile reprint, all of the images have been blanked out. Yeah, interesting. All right, Lynn, isn't it? Kind of a nice idea, like a little miracle when the saint most needed it. Wooden tablets. The other materials for writing on are called by various names. Tively Fili, tablets of the poets. Towel Lorga, tablet staves, lorg being a staff. Tavlorga Fili, the staves of the poets. And Flesk Fili, the poet's rod. Careful now. Of the first two names, the first part in each case is derived from the Latin tabula or tabella, table or tablet. But the other two, Tavlorga Fili and Flesk Fili, are pure Irish. These tablets were generally made of beech or birch, but sometimes other timber was used. In the tale of Baile and Eileen, it is related that when the two trees, a yew and an apple tree, that grew together over the lovers' graves were cut down, they were made into Tively Fili, on which the poets wrote the sad history of the youth and the maiden. The twining branches, that sounds like the story of the end of the sorrowful tale of Deirdre and Naoise, how they were put in graves, and the trees that grew out of the graves, their branches entwined, and then they were dug up and separated, buried either side of a lake, and the branches, the trees grew and the branches entwined again. And if you've read my book, Mythical Ireland, officially now out of print. A situation that I don't like being in, but until I can find a way to reprint it, unfortunately. You'll have read a section about the Milky Way in which I talk about just that the twining branches of the Deirdre story. It was a very old description of the Milky Way. On which, yes. In the story of the colloquy of the ancients, King Dermot directs that the lore told by the old man Caillte should be, quote, written on Tavlorga Fili in the language of the Olive, unquote, which was done. Several of these were commonly bound up together, and O'Curry conjectures that they were kept in the form of a fan held together by a pivot at one end, so that they could be opened out or closed up conveniently. The characters were either written in ink or cut in with a knife. Ogham, which consists of lines or notches, was often cut in. Snapper Earl has joined us. Yes, indeed. And Catherine Cleary is here also. Brilliant stuff. Hello, Catherine. A pleasure to see you both on the Zoom that we had recently. The use of tablets for writing on was not peculiar to the Irish, for it is well known that before parchment came into general use, the Romans, the Jews, and other ancient nations inscribed their laws, poems, etc. on wooden tablets. The writing tablets used by ecclesiastics, which must have been similar to the Tivoli Fili, were commonly known by the name of polera, a term used collectively to denote a number of single staves. This word is derived from the Latin pugillaris, which means much the same thing, a writing tablet. These tablets, when not in use, were kept in a bundle tied up with leather straps. During Palladius's brief visit to the east coast of Ireland, he founded 3 churches, in one of which, Kelfinna, now Killeen Cormac, for which see page 315 Supra, which we must have read in a previous episode, he left several relics, among them his palera, or, quote, tablets on which he used to write, unquote. Several of the old writers derive this word, no doubt wrongly, from his name, for they say it means Palladius's burden, as if shortened from palad air. Sometimes this tablet writing was in ink, but more commonly the surface was covered with wax, which was written in with a metallic style. Hence, these tablets are called caraculum, from cera, wax, in the Latin lives of the saints. This custom of writing on waxed tablets with a style is often mentioned in the lives of the saints, both Latin and Irish, as well as in the lay literature. In the copy of the Euricept in the Book of Lecan, the following derivation of the Irish word littera, or letters, is given. Quote, littera, Littera, from littera, Litura, i.e., from the smoothing or rubbing the ancients used to put on old waxed tablets, to make them again smooth and fit for writing on. For it is on these they first wrote, unquote. Sounds like the early medieval equivalent of a whiteboard or an erasable board. In a story about St. Ciaran in his Irish life, he is represented as writing on his waxed tablets, which are called in one place Polera Ciaran, Ciaran's tablets, while in 2 other places the whole collection of tablets is called Lower, i.e. a book. We may conclude that waxed tablets were used for temporary purposes, such as taking notes of a sermon or other such memorandums. They were employed also by schoolmasters in old times for teaching their scholars the elements of reading. Adovnon, in the 7th century, mentions that he inscribed certain writings at first, temporarily, on waxed tablets, and afterwards on vellum. This temporary use is also implied in the full story referred to above about St. Kieran's Polera. For short, temporary notes, a slate and pencil were also used, as they are at the present day, of which we have an example in the story of Kinfela the Learned. When he was at the college of Tuam Drechen, now Tom Regan in Cavan, what he heard by day, he wrote down roughly on slates and tablets, a lachov agus i tadliv, but at night he transcribed the entries into a vellum book. All literary matter intended to be permanent was written on vellum or parchment. I'm not aware that any of the poet's staves, the Taivle Fili, have been preserved, though Dowald MacFurbish had a number of them in the 17th century. But a book of waxed tablets, with the writing still quite plain, was found under the surface near Mahara and presented to the Royal Irish Academy in 1845. Dr. Todd, who wrote a paper on this book, proves that the use of waxed tablets continued till the 7th century. The records show that the tablet staves, of whatever kind, were long and narrow. Hence they are called in the Fair of Carman by the appropriate name of slisnia, the plural form of slisnech, a long, narrow slit or board, derived from the simple word slish, S-L-I-S, a narrow slit or thin board, cognate with English slice. This is further borne out by a circumstance related in Muracu's memoir of St. Patrick. That's the tripartite life. Once the saint and his companions, with their writing tablets in their hands, cum tabulis in manibus scriptus, approached a group of the pagans of Connacht who mistook or pretended to mistake the tablets for swords, so that they cried out that the visitors should be killed, as they came with swords in their hands to shed people's blood. This circumstance proves that they were of considerable length, which is also shown for the poet's staves by a regulation laid down in Brehon law that a poet might use his towel lorg to defend himself against wicked dogs. Fascinating stuff. Petrie, in the Round Towers of Ireland, has shown that the word polera, to use his own words, quote, was applied, at least in later times, to a satchel for books, tiag, T-I-A-G. And he quotes a passage from an old Trinity College manuscript in which polera is explained tiag luar, a satchel for books. But the general meaning of the word was unquestionably tablets. And that the polera and tiag were ordinary different things is clearly shown by the following passage from the Irish life of St. Columkill, in which they are distinguished. Quote, for it was his, Columba's, wont to make crosses and tablets and satchels, polera ocus tiaga, for books and all church gear, unquote. And again, it is stated in the same place that he blessed, quote, 100 polera with 100 croziers and 100 tiaga or satchels, unquote. For more about book satchels, see the next page. And at this point, we might not get there. Sorry to hear about Evan having a slight concussion, Vicky, but glad to hear that he's all right after his little mishap. Please do pass on our best wishes to him from all of us. We had a museum in Antrim, says Lynn Murphy, and it was from the sailors, and lots were written on bones and shells. Wow. I occasionally find typewritten letters tucked into books. People don't write letters anymore, really, do they? Michael Pike has joined us late, but as they always say, better late than never, and a wizard is never late anyway. And the final paragraph before we finish for today is called style. When writing on a waxed tablet, they used a graif or graif, Graib, which would be lenited, Graibh, or Graif, i.e. a graphium, a sharp-pointed style of metal, which, when not in use, was commonly kept fastened in the cloak, much as people now keep pins in the sleeve. One day, while St. Columkill was writing in his hut, he heard the noise of battle in the air. It was St. Maidoc fighting with some demons to rescue the soul of King Branduff, which they were carrying off. Sticking the graif into his cloak, he rushed out to help Maidoc. And it is pleasant to record that the two saints overcame the demons and sent the poor soul straight up to heaven. When St. Patrick was in the act of destroying the idol, Crom Croch, his graif fell out of his mantle into the heather, where he had some difficulty in finding it afterwards. Could he not just have said a prayer? Please help me find. Could have said a prayer to St. Anthony, of course, who is very well known, or at least used to be in Catholic Ireland, as the saint to whom you prayed when you lost something and wanted to find it again. Just a reminder, there's Erica Rivertree in Louisville, Kentucky. A very good afternoon to you, Erica. Thank you for joining us. And what was I going to say? Yeah. A reminder that if you haven't done so already, a wonderful, wonderful Christmas present, now that we're just over a month away from it, is, of course, the 2025 Mythical Ireland calendar. Thank you all of those who have ordered your calendar, but don't forget there are still plenty of copies and still good time to order them to get them before the Christmas mail rush. The link has just been shared to YouTube and Facebook. Don't forget also that there are many other nice gifts that you could consider for a loved one. Don't forget that there's a gift card, anything from €25 to 500, which can be purchased on the website and sent electronically to your loved one to be redeemed against books and calendars and t-shirts and limited edition prints and all the other stuff. But don't also forget something that maybe has slipped a little bit under the radar. If you wanted something sort of really different, you could consider something like an aluminium print of a very nice Newgrange photograph taken by yours truly, which you can order from the website at the link I'm just sharing there. Plus, there are lots of brain fart. There are lots of limited edition prints on the website also. If you're looking for something very mythical Irelandish as a nice Christmas gift, and so we have a series of limited edition prints. There are 22 or 23 of them, and each one is numbered. So you'll get there's a run of 100 on each of these. So when we get to 100, there'll be no more prints made, and you'll have one of those, So lots and lots of things on the website to consider in the way of Christmas presents. And don't also forget, this is very important, that scrolling ticker tape at the bottom of the screen. Become a patron. So if you're going to become a patron, just be aware of the fact that a lot of people are signing up as a free patron, which Patreon decided to do last year to allow people to sign up for free. But there's no real benefit to signing up for free. The idea is that you offer a monthly pledge of patronage to support Mythical Ireland, and you get something in return for that. Anyway, the Bronze Age and above patrons are at the best level in terms of what you get. So, for instance, currently, the most recent addition on Patreon, and exclusive to Patreon, won't be on YouTube or on Facebook. It may eventually be, but for the time being, only available to patrons at the Bronze Age level and above, is the audio recording of the talk that I gave at the Sligo Archaeology and Mythology Conference, which was 2 weekends ago. Coming up soon, also for Mythical Ireland patrons at the Bronze Age level and above, is my talk given at Whitestown House, where we had a lovely evening called Myths by the Fireside. And I spoke in particular about the origins of Samhain and that time of the year where we were sort of just entering a few weeks ago, where we were coming up upon the old cross quarter date halfway between autumn equinox and winter solstice. And that talk is actually 1 hour and 20 minutes long. So the audio of that will be made available to patrons in the coming days. I'm also page by page sharing the text of a book, the largest book that I've ever written, plus regular other updates, including photographs, videos, news announcements, and all sorts of stuff. So please, you may consider becoming a patron. It's really, really very important, because without that, I would literally, as I've said repeatedly, I would have to go back to working full time, and I would not be able to invest half the time and energy that I've been able to in Mythical Ireland. The other important thing is, if you're on the website and you haven't done so already, very useful thing is to sign up for the newsletter. It is free to sign up for. It is not merely a weekly email containing advertising. Most of the emails are actually long read emails about various subjects. And in the coming few days, I'm planning to write and share with patrons and the email newsletter an article about the ancient site known as Clochta, or the Hill of Ward, which it has been claimed is the site of the origin of Halloween. A claim which I think is a little bit enthusiastic, a little bit dubious, while there's no doubt that there were celebrations held there anciently. The idea that it's the absolute, beginning of Halloween is tenuous at least, and total BS at worst, but it's not total BS, of course, and I don't believe that. And recently, on the way back from Sligo, I stopped at Clochta, got some very nice aerial pictures with the low sun lighting up the earthworks there. So I'll be sharing those exclusively, but please do, as I said, consider. I know I sound like a broken record, but this is so very important, because without this, basically nothing else is able to happen. And the other thing is, don't forget that although a couple of my books are out of print, Mythical Ireland and Newgrange, a lot of them are still in print. And the best way to support Mythical Ireland is to get yourself signed copies of those on the website. There's still plenty of time to get your orders in for Christmas presents, if that's the way you're thinking. Patreon being a patron is so beneficial to both parties, says Anne McCallum. Thank you, Anne. A great patron and supporter. Dankness is asking, just wondering, with the Cailleach, do you think she is the Witch's Head Nebula at Orion's knee, the hag? The Witch Head Nebula looks like stones dropping from Orion's apron. I'd have to immediately say no, because the Witch's Head Nebula, as far as I know, is not visible to the naked eye. It's an object only visible on long exposure photographs, or am I wrong? And although the skies were probably a little bit, it's an extremely faint reflection nebula, and it only shows up in very long exposure photographs. So no, I don't, is the quick answer, Dankness, because that's just highly unlikely. Unless the ancients were equipped with some way to see very, very faint nebulous regions of the sky that only modern equipment can see. I'm coming to Eru for Bealtaine 2025. Maybe I'll be able to get in one of your tours, Anthony, says Erica. Brilliant stuff, yeah. And look out for the tour schedule at that time. Of course, the tour is scheduled very, very quiet at the moment, although I am planning one more public tour of Fornox before solstice, because Fornox is one of the few places that you can do a tour where it doesn't matter about the weather, because you can just go inside the monument. I generally start the tour outside and talk about the surrounding landscape, but if it's bucketing down with heavy rain, I would just bring everybody inside. So you can't do that at the Hill of Tara or the Hill of Slane or Douth or other places where you're outside all the time. But anyway, it's very weird that it looks like an old lady, though, and Barnard's Loop looks like an apron, but I get your point. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And some of those things are absolutely fascinating. I've never successfully taken long exposure photographs, which is interesting because I've been an astronomer for over 40 years. But it's something I'd love to get into, but it takes a lot of equipment and time and patience and skill and all the rest. But yeah, that's the problem with that idea, is that these things are not visible to the naked eye and would not have been visible back then either in the Neolithic, even though the skies would doubtlessly have been clearer, A, because there was pretty much no atmospheric pollution back then, and B, there was absolutely no light pollution back then. Interesting idea that certainly some of the fainter stars that would be verging on difficult viewing from many places today would have been visible back then, but not magnitude 13 nebulae, definitely not. Yes, indeed. Yes, so if there are any questions or comments on tonight's episode, we'll hang around for a couple of minutes. Of course, don't forget, especially if you're only joining us for the first time tonight, we stream every Monday at the same time. Now, that comes with a little footnote, which is sometimes, for various reasons, I have to postpone or cancel. Last week, for instance, I had to cancel. But most Mondays, 8 p.m. Irish time, and that translates most of the time, except for when the clocks are changing, into 3 p.m. In New York or Eastern time, and 12 noon Pacific, whether you're in San Francisco or Seattle or Vancouver. So join us, please, and come back as we continue to explore Irish mythology, history, folklore, legend, medieval studies, language, culture, music, poetry, prehistory, archaeology, anthropology, and many more subjects, astronomy. And of course, if you are new, don't forget that you have 300 previous episodes that you can now rewatch. They're all available on the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel. And the quickest way to find that is just to type in Mythical Ireland, one word, into YouTube, or to go to youtube.com/Mythical Ireland, which I think is the shortcut that I always gave it as a shortcut. Does it still work? youtube.com/Mythical Ireland. Yes, will bring you to the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel. If you're on social media, we're on Facebook. There's a page, the Mythical Ireland page, but there's also the Mythical Ireland community. If you're an artist or creative person who is inspired by to create artistic or poetic or musical or sculptorial work, whatever it happens to be, based on Irish myth or legend or history or culture or prehistory, then please feel free to join Mythical Ireland Creatives, where lots of such people are sharing their wonderful work. Rossio says, it was a very interesting lecture. Glad you enjoyed it. Brilliant stuff. It's been the most enjoyable, says Lynn. Oh yes, good call. Forgot about that. Which I can't remember. It would take a while to watch all 300 episodes. Yeah, let's just say you wouldn't be watching them back to back. It would probably. I mean, if you take it that if you skip the introductions and the greetings and all of that, probably at least an hour in each. It's 300 hours. Yeah. If you were to sorry. I'm just doing some calculations. There are 168 hours in a week. So it would take you almost 2 weeks if you didn't take any breaks. Now, conceivably, you could probably watch on a laptop or a tablet that you could keep charged and take it to the bathroom with you, but then you wouldn't be able to sleep. Yeah. So if you watch them all back to back, that is the 300 previous episodes of Live Irish Myths, you've enough to keep you very busy for a long time. Thanks, Anne. And yeah, I'm glad too. And family comes first, as you all know. So sometimes you just have to put everything else to one side. And speaking of which, we will, of course, pass on all your best wishes to Tom, who had a procedure done today, and I've yet to hear an update from him. So I'm sure he'll be about at some point, maybe tomorrow, to give an update himself. Sorry, I have to go before your final goodbyes. Thank you for reading and clarification about language and terms. Tua, take care. Thanks, Auntie Joe. We'll talk to you very soon. We'll see you next week. Everyone have a great week. Keep safe, happy and healthy. No cats spilling tea today. And I'm redoing my library room, so I might have fewer stacks of books everywhere, at least for a while. That's from Barbara. Brilliant stuff. Always good company, says John. Brilliant stuff. I think there recently was a Dark Skies Festival in Mayo. Yeah, the very active astronomy group over there. I think I'm all caught up. So hopefully we'll see you next week. I have to put the bins out, and I can hear the rain hitting the ceiling of the library here. It's a cold and wet night out there. The only thing is that the rain is due to stop, and we're due to have a frosty and cold week with the possibility of snow. But I think most of the snow will be in the west and northwest. Sligo could be interesting. Could be some nice photographs to be had in Sligo over the next few days. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. It's been a great pleasure, as always, to be your host here on Mythflix, or Live Irish Myths, to give it its formal title. In the meantime, go gently, as they say. Have a safe and happy week, and continue your studies, and make sure that you're well versed on all this stuff for the next episode. And we'll see you next week, if not in between. Patrons at the Bronze Age level, as I say, as soon as I get the opportunity to write the Clochta email first, but I'm going to upload the Whitestown talk for patrons at the Bronze Age. That's $10 a month, by the way, for those who are interested. That's $10 US. I think that's the equivalent of about €8. I'm not sure what it is in Canadian dollars. Not sure what it is in British pounds. It's probably about 7 or 8 British pounds. $10 a month for access. And when you sign up as a patron, now you get access to all the stuff that's been shared at that level since the beginning of Mythical Ireland on Patreon, which, by the way, was back in 2017. So there are probably hundreds of posts. There are lots of exclusive videos that have never been seen outside of Patreon, including interviews with very well-known people like the author Morgan Llewellyn and Michael Quirk, the woodcarver, and Michael Slavin, the author. Some podcasts, some recordings of previous talks, and tons of articles and photographs and other things. Between now and next week, while you're missing Mythical Ireland, go on over to Patreon and sign up. But just do me one favor. Sign up at a paid level. Don't sign up as a free patron, because it will be of no benefit to you. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you very much. We'll see you all next week. All that remains for me to say at this moment in time is Ichawa, Kolosov, Slán Gofol, August Tog Goboge. Take it easy.